Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Ridenauer, and I'm back with a great episode that's in store for everyone. Hope you all have been doing well. We've got the season roaring on, and a lot of things have been going on, and there have been some players that have been playing very well, but I've been very impressed with a lot of teams early on that have caught my eye. The Mariners and the Royals have both really jumped out, and I'm just very intrigued by both teams and also where they're going to go in the future, what kind of direction they're going to go in, because they're two very young teams that I think are developing in the right direction. But we'll get into all of that today. We'll have a little news, some players who have been standing out, and all the sort. So let's get into it, and I'll first dive right into all of the latest news and everything going around the league and what has all been going on in the MLB, really. I'll then get into which off-season pickups have been struggling the most for their new teams, but also which players that have stuck out and have really been succeeding for their new teams. And then I'll later on get into whether or not the White Sox and the Padres can still be as competitive and as successful with some of their star players struggling with injuries. And as always, make sure you stick around for the final few minutes of the show today, as I'll get into which teams will be the most likely to challenge the Dodgers for the World Series and prevent them repeating as champions. So we've got a jam-packed show, like I mentioned. And so I'll get right into the news. And as we may or may not know, the MLB has moved the All-Star Game from Atlanta to Colorado for this year after a controversial law was passed in Georgia that was restricting voting rights to certain people. And so the MLB, a wise move on their part, decided to move it in response to that, tried to, again, figure something out, couldn't get it figured out, and so as a result, Rob Manfred and the MLB wound up moving the All-Star Game from being in Atlanta over to Colorado. This year, the MLB and the All-Star Game they're going to honor Hank Aaron, and having it in Atlanta, that would have been very fitting since that was, again, where most of his career took place. But it was very, again, it was something that was needed. They needed to do that in order to, again, line up with the same things that have been going on and trying to, stand firm and let people know, hey, we do not approve or support this. We are going to go against what this ruling has been in Georgia, and as a result, we're going to take the MLB and the All-Star Game out of the city and somewhere else in response to this, because we cannot accept this and we cannot condone this. And other options could have been Milwaukee. Quite frankly, I was shocked they didn't move it to Milwaukee because, again, he spent a good portion of his career there. I think that would have made a little bit more sense. I'm not mad about Colorado. I think that's a great spot. I'm just saying, if you're trying to honor the legacy of a player like Hank Aaron, you probably want to do it in places where there is some sort of some sort of kind of connection or some sort of kind of familiarity or whatever there might be, some sort of resemblance of his career in terms of and in relation to those places that he played. Again, Milwaukee or Atlanta, somewhere that it would have made sense. And I think Colorado, again, it's a little off the beaten path, but I think it's still, a good spot nonetheless, because they've already talked about it. The home run derby is going to be very interesting. As we all know, baseballs like to just fly out of that ballpark, and so I definitely think that it's going to be a very interesting home run derby. Now, I know that they have humiditators in the stadium to try and make the balls not as dense and try and lighten the balls a little bit, make them not fly as far. But there's actually been a couple players, and it was pretty funny. Charlie Blackmon, I think, he said, why don't we just unplug those for a day and just see where the balls go? Let them go. Let them fly out of the ballpark. Make it kind of entertaining for the people to watch. The Rockies haven't hosted an All-Star game since 1998, and actually during that 1998 All-Star game and that All-Star weekend, the home run derby was won by Ken Griffey Jr., and he beat out Jim Thome in the finals, and a lot of people were mentioning that it was an incredible home run derby to watch. So it is going to be a very, I think, exciting year in Colorado. I'm excited to see how the All-Star Game is going to turn out. If it was a year that was not so marred by the pandemic and by COVID, I would maybe consider going out to the All-Star game and potentially thinking about going and catching the game. But again, that's probably not very likely right now because of COVID and so on and so forth, and also just money. I mean, that's a lot of money, and that'd be a very big expenditure. But one of these days, I'll get back to the All-Star game. I've only been one time. I went to the one in D.C. a few years ago. Could have gone to the one that was in Cleveland, but I wound up being busy that day. Unfortunately, I had some friends that called me up at the last minute, and if I wasn't doing anything, I would have said, absolutely, I'll be ready in 10 minutes, but unfortunately, I was out doing something. But nonetheless, it's going to be a really good All-Star break this year. I'm really excited for it to be in Colorado and just to see how it's going to be and what kind of festivities go on and really how the Home Run Derby is going to be also. But I want to now get into a little injury report and share some injury updates for certain players around the league because there's been a couple guys getting really banged up early on, and I think a lot of people are also somewhat worried that the very quick turnaround, but also just kind of the long pause, if you will, and the long break in between the seasons in which there's a full season and then another full season, that year and a half kind of pause, if you will, because of COVID, that's going to do some things to some guys, right? They're not in the shape or the conditioning to be ready to go for a 162-game grind without injuries probably coming up at some point or another. That's just how it is, right? I mean, your body's not used to this, and you're trying to get back into the swing of things, no pun intended, and it's going to be, I think, a little bit harder than it normally is because there's a season that was kind of right in the middle of things that was only 60 games. There was 100 fewer games, so not as much baseball, so that's how guys are having to kind of get reacclimated, if you will. So right now, Aaron Judge, he's been battling some general soreness on his side. Aaron Boone does not think it should be of any sort of concern. He said that they're going to get some x-rays and MRIs, but actually I think that he said that they were considering it at first, getting x-rays and MRIs, and then they did a little bit more investigating into it, and they don't think that it's going to be serious enough for him to get an MRI, so that is good. He has had issues in the past with his side and with his ribs, so that is something to just keep an eye out for, but I think that Aaron Judge is going to be fine. Ketel Marte for the Diamondbacks exited Wednesday's game with a leg injury. He was running down to first base. He felt a little tightness, tried to stop, and it was a little bit too late on that. Hobbled off the field, needed to be helped off the field a little bit. But the D-backs, they're pretty banged up. I mean, they're really banged up. Cole Calhoun is injured right now. Zach Allen, as we know, with a stress fracture on his forearm. So this is a team that I think if they were completely healthy, might be a different story. Maybe not, but they have already started to, they got bit by the injury bug, if you will, and it started early on. George Springer for the Blue Jays, he was actually, this is very unfortunate for him, he was coming back from the oblique injury that he initially suffered at the end of spring training, missed the first couple of the games of the year, and then he was rehabbing it, and he was on his way back to getting into playing, and then he actually wound up injuring his right quad while rehabbing his oblique injury. So now he's back on the 10-day injured list. So again, hopefully this is not a recurring theme for George Springer and the Blue Jays because they're going to need him as much as possible this year, especially in this AL East, because the Red Sox, they have finally woken up. Their bats have started to get going. The Red Sox, for the first 2 or 3 games, they looked like they, again, forgot how to play baseball, but now they've picked it up a little bit. The Yankees have been playing strong as well, and the Orioles are also off to a very good start as well. So this Blue Jays team needs to hope that George Springer can stay healthy. I mean, they obviously have other players there, but Teoscar Hernandez has not been hitting very well this year. Lourdes Gurriel's hitting all right. They just need hope and pray that George Springer does not have not only an injury that might take him out for most of the year, but just nothing nagging, right? I mean, quite frankly, a nagging injury that bothers you the entire year, I think is just as bad as when you're out for 5 or 6 months. Because essentially, if you add up that time, a nagging injury, you play for 2 or 3 games and then you re-aggravate something, and then all of a sudden you're back on the injured list. And then you're on the injured list for 10 or 15 days, you go back out and play for a game and it gets re-injured again. And so it's kind of the back and forth. You can never really get in a rhythm, so it's almost like being out for 5 or 6 months. So hopefully George Springer is able to, get healthy, get back into shape, and get ready to go because this Blue Jays team, they need him. Not to mention, they've got a lot of money tied up with him, and they don't want to waste this money this year at least with having him injured all the time and they're still having to pay him, right? I mean, that would be probably very aggravating. But nonetheless, it's good that he's just even on the team and he's tied up for the next 5 or 6 years because even if this year's not the year, they've got at least 4 or 5 more to go, and they've got a really good team that's only going to get better, and I think that they're only going to just continue to improve from here on out. But getting into some other injuries, as we know, Eloy Jimenez has been out with a pec injury. He tore his pec muscle, but also the injury bug has continued to hit the White Sox as Tim Anderson is continuing to battle a hamstring injury he suffered about a week ago. He should be back pretty soon, if not already. So that is, again, something to just pay attention to moving forward into the season. How does that nagging hamstring injury affect Tim Anderson at all this season? And again, this is actually kind of an unfortunate one for the Athletics because this is a team that prides itself on its bullpen, A, and B, they took a big hit with their bullpen this past offseason, losing Liam Hendricks and Joaquin Soria, and now they might be in some bigger trouble. Trevor Rosenthal, what was thought to be just right shoulder inflammation for him and he was going to be back to normal, it has actually turned out to be a potential thoracic outlet surgery kind of situation where he might be out for 3 to 4 months. He might be out for quite some time. And again, this Athletics team, they're going to need him as much as they possibly can. I mean, this team has literally not won a game yet, right? They've continued to struggle. They have started off very, very poorly, and having that kind of looming over their head that their top-tier reliever and / closer that they'll have this year is going to be out for potentially 3 to 4 months, that's not making anything better, right? I mean, Elvis Andrus is not hitting well. He's hitting below 100. He's hitting .077. We'll hear about him in the next segment, but he's not off to a great start. So this Athletics team, they really need to figure it out. And I've mentioned it before, they're a team that, for whatever reason, they seem to really, 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 really rely on the pitching and the defense. Now, they've got, again, Matt Olson and Matt Chapman are some of the best 1-2 combos of hitters in baseball. But for whatever reason, at times they underperform, and I just don't quite understand it. And I hope they're not players that they show this potential and they show this ability, but then it kind of just vanishes and evaporates into thin air. And as time goes on, they don't get back to that point that they were once at, right? So the Athletics need to figure it out. Hopefully Trevor Rosenthal is back to normal sooner rather than later. But then finally, as we may or may not know, Fernando Tatis is battling some major shoulder problems after injuring it while taking that bat a couple of the games ago. He's had some serious shoulder problems in the past as well, right? I mean, that is something to definitely pay attention to, because if this is, again, another instance where we've got a nagging injury for somebody like Fernando Tatis, who, again, is one of the top players in the league, one of the top up-and-coming players in the league, that's something to be concerned about, especially if you're the Padres, and especially if you just signed that huge extension with him. So hopefully he'll get back to health soon. So that's just a little injury update, if you will. But I just want to wrap up highlighting some players who have really continued to play well recently, and also just where some teams stand in their respective divisions. So I'll just run through the divisions real quickly and go through where each team is standing, kind of who's in first, who's in second, going through all the different divisions. So in the NL Central, we've got a very interesting, somewhat developing story, as the Reds are 5-1 right now. And again, this is as of recording on April 9th. So today on Friday, they're 5-1. The Cardinals are 5-2. The NL East right now, the Phillies are 5-1. The Mets are 2-2. So that's your top two teams right there. The Marlins are 1-6. They are off to a really bad start. And again, you kind of could guess that last year they should not have been in the playoffs. They only got in because it was 60 games and it was a short sprint, and they probably all said, hey, we only have 60 games. Let's make the most of it. Right now you've got 162, and that seems like light years ahead of you. So I definitely think the Marlins are going to really struggle this year. But over for the NL West, the Dodgers, they're first place with 5-2, and then the Padres are second at 4-3. But then the rest of the division has a losing record, right? The Giants are 3-3. I mean, they have a 500 record. They're 3-3. The Rockies are 3-4, and the Diamondbacks are 2-5. And like I mentioned, the Diamondbacks have every single injury under the sun happening to their players. So they're really not in a great spot right now. Now, over for the AL East, like I mentioned, the Orioles are off to a strong start, 4-3 right now. Boston's 4-3, second place. The Yankees are 3-3, while the Blue Jays are 3-4, and the Rays are 2-4. Going to the AL Central, the Twins, they're 5-2, sitting in first place. Andrelton Simmons has been playing very well lately. I'm going to give him a lot of credit. Kenta Maeda and Jose Barrios have also been pitching very well for them, and having Barrios back to his normal self, if you will, and showing people that potential of an ace that he's displayed in the past. I mean, let's face it, Kenta Maeda's their ace. There's no question about it. And I think the fact that they've got two players that are ace caliber pitchers on their staff, that's really good, right? I think this Twins team, this might be a year where they actually surprise people, including myself. I'm still sold on the White Sox. They're second place right now, 4-4. They're right in front of the Tigers that are 3-3 and the Royals that are 3-3. But the Royals and the Orioles have been the two surprising teams for me. I would never have guessed that they would be off to this strong a start. I mean, they are off to a really good start. And then finally in the AL West, we've got the Astros are sitting at 6-1, first place, followed by the Angels at 5-2. The Angels might have replaced the Athletics for that kind of second spot, that kind of foil team to the Astros in the AL West, because Oakland, well, now they're not winless. They're 1-7, so things have not gotten any better. They actually have the worst record in baseball right now. And so, yeah, it's not a really good start for the Athletics at all. But all in all, some other teams that are not playing great. I mean, the Pirates 1-6, not off to a great start. The Nationals have been hit with COVID cancellations and whatnot, so they've only played 3 games. They're 1-2 right now, so a little hard to gauge where they're at right now. But just getting into some statistics, some team stats, actually. I want to get into some team stats because there's some teams that are leading some categories that you would have never guessed. The Reds right now are the best hitting team in baseball. They're averaging a .316 average as a team. They're first place ahead of the Dodgers, who's second at .310, and the Astros that are third. And you know what? The Astros going from first place in batting average in 2019 to about 19th or 20th in batting average as a team in 2020 to now back to third place. You know, that's a lot of back and forth, but I think the Astros, they're trying to show people that they can win and they can do it without cheating. And so I think that they're kind of on a mission. They're kind of on a mission to try and prove people wrong, and rightfully so. I mean, I think they've got a lot to prove. They need to show to people that they're a legitimate team that can win without having external kind of cheating scandals and cheating methods, if you will. And I know that the MLB is really cracking down on that. So we'll see how that goes. But then the Reds, again, they lead the MLB in team RBIs at 54. The Astros lead the MLB in team home runs at 15. Now getting in some pitching stats, we'll look at the Yankees. They've got the best team ERA, followed by the Padres with a 1.97 ERA. So that is, again, something really good to look at if you're a Padres fan, even with your star player Fernando Tatis out for who knows how long. And I've actually seen some very, very unsettling kind of reports that it might be an entire season thing. He might be out for the entire season. And so I'm really hopeful that we don't have to see a career go to waste because of injury, right? And I think Tatis, got so much talent, and it would be so unfortunate if he was just marred by injuries for the majority of his career, because again, face it, he has not played a full 162 games even in his entire career, let alone in one season. So we've seen sample sizes of Fernando Tatis, and I hope that we can see the full dose of him and not just, he plays for 15 games, he's off to a great start, and then he gets injured, and then that's that. So I'm hoping that if this is a year where he is injured, he can get it out of the way early on in his career, and then he can have a lot of health and rejuvenation later on into his career. But overall, a lot of teams have been playing very well. Again, like I mentioned, I've been very impressed with the Orioles. I've been very impressed with the Royals. I've been very impressed with the Reds. I mean, the Reds have been absolutely smacking the ball all over the field this early on this season. I mean, they've put up some huge double-digit run totals in a couple games. So I think that this is a team to definitely watch. They might be on a mission this year to try and show people like, hey, we might have been disappointing last year, but that was last year. This is this year. And so I think that it could be a fun back and forth between the Reds and the Cardinals. I will say I think they've got a little bit more competition to deal with the Brewers and maybe even the Cubs. But at the end of the day, I love where the Reds are going. It's really exciting to see other teams get involved and be at the top of the leaderboard instead of the same teams over and over again. It's refreshing. It's nice to see. But folks, that's going to do it for us in our first segment, but don't go anywhere, because coming up after the commercial break, I'm going to get into some players that have been doing really, really well early on, and also some players that have not been doing very well early on that have been off-season acquisitions, and they're on new teams this year, and which players have had the biggest impacts so far on those new teams. Folks, don't go anywhere, because we'll be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA, to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Jack Ridenour with you all, and in our first segment, I got right into discussing some news going around the league, but also some players that have been playing well and where some teams are right now in their divisions. But make sure you stick around for the final segment today, where I'll get into which teams are most likely and able, really, to challenge the Dodgers for the World Series and prevent them from repeating as champions. But I want to get into some players who were off-season pickups and some very interesting off-season pickups who have been playing well and also not so well. So I'll get right into that. There's been some guys that have been playing really well. Quite frankly, there's some guys that have been playing well that I did not expect to play well at all, and one of them being Michael A. Taylor. Michael, again, I have mentioned this before, and I will continue to mention this. There is a running joke in Washington, D.C. when he was playing for the Nationals that he was not Michael A. Taylor, but he was Michael K. Taylor, because he would either strike out or he'd hit a home run. Well, this year, he's not striking out as much, and he's definitely hitting a lot more home runs. Through 23 at-bats, he's batting .391 right now. He's got 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, and a 1.112 OPS. Now, he was a huge pickup, I think, for the Royals in the offseason because they had Alex Gordon retire, so they had some defense leaving the team, and they were going to need, and he's a good defender in the outfield. I mean, he covers a lot of ground. He was a great center fielder for the Nationals. And so I did initially like that. I did not like it for his bat because, again, I'm kind of coming from the mindset that he's not a great hitter. He's not somebody that you want to have in a crucial situation. But, hey, he started off really hot early on in the year. He had an opening day home run. He could actually be a secretly really good pickup for the Royals, and that could actually give them some added offensive boost, right? You've got Salvador Perez there who can definitely hit. I know he's been kind of struggling a little bit here and there this year, but you've got Whit Merrifield, who's also been playing very well. I know Carlos Santana has not been off to a great start. And quite frankly, and I'm going to mention him a little bit later, Andrew Benintendi, he might be one of the most disappointing baseball players in the last 10 years. I really hate to say that. I really do, because I just felt like when I first heard about Benintendi, all I heard about was how good he is and how much potential he's got. And I remember when the Royals made that trade for him, I just was not totally sold on it. I was like, why would you go after a guy like that? He's, again, kind of getting to 26, 27. He has not met the expectations that people had set for him and had really kind of assumed about him at all. Not even close, in my opinion. I mean, maybe his rookie year, but that was about it. And as a result, you have to admit that if you're that disappointing that early on in your career and you can't figure it out, it's going to be a long uphill battle, and I think that's what it's been right now for Andrew Benintendi. But we'll get into his stats a little bit later. But Michael A. Taylor, I think, has been off to a really great start, and I hope he can keep it up. I really do. I've always liked Michael A. Taylor. I know that Michael K. Taylor is, kind of a funny joke, but he was always a reliable defender. He was a solid player all around, and I really hope that he can help this Royals team out, because I think this Royals team has been secretly doing some very interesting things here and there early on and, really in the last few years as well. So, we'll have to see how things pan out for them and Michael A. Taylor. But another player that I briefly mentioned in the first segment that's been playing great, Andrelton Simmons. Again, through 20 at-bats, and I know that this is early on in the year. It's very early on. But these are off-season pickups that I think we need to be paying attention to. We need to be paying attention to these players that have been, again, guys that were picked up in the offseason that people were a little weary of or a little, maybe not. I mean, Andrelton Simmons I thought was going to be a good pickup for them nonetheless, but yeah, I think he's exceeded expectations. He's batting .450 through his first 20 at-bats. He's got 3 RBIs, and he's got a 1.177 OPS. So he's clearly just been absolutely crushing the ball, right? Crushing the ball. And so I think that's a great sign, especially for this Twins team. I mean, you look at this Twins team, and it's a very, very, very interesting kind of makeup, right? You've got, obviously, Nelson Cruz, who is going to be the main piece, right? That's going to be the guy that's going to get all the attention. He's still hitting bombs well into his 40s, getting closer to his 40s. But you also have other guys like Mitch Garver, who's actually been playing much better this year. I remember talking about him a year ago, saying that I hope he has another good year after his 2019 campaign. Batting average has not been great. He's batting .222, but he's got 2 homers and 4 RBIs this season. So it's good that Simmons has been picking it up, and he's been really kind of leading the charge because, I mean, Simmons is batting .450 for this Twins team. Nelson Cruz is batting .429. Luis Arias is batting .381. So you've got a lot of guys that are batting really, really well. And so this Twins team might be exceeding expectations, not only Andrelton Simmons, but the team as a whole. So, and not to mention, he brings a lot of defense. He's a great glove over at shortstop. So another player that's also been off to a really awesome start for his new team, obviously Nolan Arenado. who would have thought he was going to be a bad one, right? I mean, who would have thought he was going to be a bad pickup? He's batting .345 right now. He's already got 2 home runs through 29 at-bats, 5 RBIs. He's got a .953 OPS. In his last 7 games, he's 5 for 10. He's 10 of 29. And he's only got 7 strikeouts in his 29 at-bats. Not too bad. He's got a .586 slugging percentage. He's off to a really good start. And so I think that although I have been critical of the other things that the Cardinals have done this offseason in terms of what other moves have they made, right? Everybody kind of looks at Nolan Arenado as the one big piece, and that's really it. Him and Paul Goldschmidt, they might be, again, the 2 feared dynamic duos in the NL, but what other offense are they going to have? What other offense can they generate? And I just really don't see anybody else on that team being that big of a hitting impact. And I think that, you look at kind of some of their stats, Yadier Molina's off to a good start. I will give him that. But looking at Paul DeJong, he's batting 125. Tyler O'Neill's batting 148, right? I mean, those are not good numbers at all. Dylan Carlson batting 182. And I know that he's young, 22 years old, right fielder. I will say he's got some good power numbers. Carlson's got 3 homers already and a .906 OPS. But Arenado and Goldschmidt are going to be the main staples of this team. And so I do wonder if that's going to be enough. Can that be enough for them to actually go really, really far into the playoffs or even go remotely even close into the playoffs, right? I mean, I really do wonder if it's going to be something that can actually turn into a huge kind of playoff run. I do wonder that because I don't know if you can just do it with 2 guys in baseball. It's not like in some other sports you can do it with 2 players. This is baseball. You're going to have to do a lot more than just having 2 guys that hit the ball really well. So another player that's been playing well on his new team, David Dahl, and again, I think that he was one of the biggest steals of the entire offseason because he's on a 1-year, $3 million deal. He's an all-star from about 2 years ago. Last year he was kind of banged up, so I don't really count last year. But this year he's batting .280. He's got an RBI. His OPS is not great, .656. But through 25 at-bats, you've got a .280 average. That's not too bad, right? And I think that this Rangers team, I don't necessarily think that they're going to be anything dynamic, but having a guy like David Dahl on your team, it gives you some sort of relief, I would personally think, because Dahl can hit above 300. He can be a guy that goes for 15 or 20 home runs. And so I do consider him to be a formidable threat, somebody that you can definitely rely on. And his teammate, who is also a pickup by the Rangers in the offseason, Nate Lau, I mean, he's been off to a great start. He's been off to a tremendous start, batting .320 with 3 home runs, 14 RBIs, a 1.066 OPS. He's actually leading the MLB in RBIs with 14. He's been crushing the ball lately. So this Rangers team, they might be getting some help out in more ways than one. I will say, though, they have not really had any help with the pitching. I mean, watching Mike Foltynewicz the other night on a couple replays, and he did not look good. And to the life of me, I'll never understand why they picked him up. I'll never get that. I do not know why they went after him in the offseason. But, hey, not my decision, not my choice. But Nate Lau and David Dahl have both been playing very, very well. Now, getting into some pitchers that have been playing on their A game, I would say Lance Lynn. Right now, one of a few guys with a 0 ERA, 13 2/3 innings pitched so far. He's only pitched in 2 games. He's 1-0, but he's got 17 strikeouts and a .95 ERA. Not too shabby. He actually, in his last outing against the Royals on April 8th, he had 11 Ks in 9 innings, gave up only 5 hits, no runs were given up. That was his one lone win of the season. That's a really good stat line if you ask me, and especially for a team that right now, the pitching is not looking very good, right? I mean, Giolito's got over a 4 ERA. Keuchel's upwards of 7 right now. So they need Lance Lynn. They need Lance Lynn because imagine if they didn't have him right now, it would be the 2-man show of Giolito and Keuchel, and that's not even really helping them out at all right now. And Lance Lynn, he brings experience. Him and Tony La Russa do have a relationship from when they were in St. Louis together, not to mention they won a World Series together, so they know what it takes. They are very, very aware of what it takes to be that really good team, to be that kind of title-contending team. And I think that, the White Sox can be that team. I think they're very capable of it. I know that they've kind of gotten bit by the injury bug a little bit, but I think nonetheless, they've got the personnel. They've got what other teams don't even have, right? The players that can actually get you there. The players that can actually, you've got Jose Abreu. I know he's not hitting well right now, but Jose Abreu is one case. Yohan Moncada also struggling, but he's got a lot of potential. You've got a guy like Yasmani Grandal, one of the better catchers in baseball. not hitting well. I know. It's early on in the year. I think guys are still trying to get back into the swing of things. Let's face it, this time last year, they were trying to figure out if they were going to even have a season or not. So this is a big time, I would say, retransitioning for some players, getting back into the swing of things, getting back into a normal rhythm of playing early on in baseball, like in April and in May, as opposed to starting out in July, late July, right? Very different, very different. So something to pay attention to is the White Sox, and especially how Lance Lynn impacts that team, because I think it's important that they've got an arm that is a reliable third option in that pitching rotation, and not to mention brings experience. And he's a durable pitcher. He can go the length of the entire game. Like I mentioned, going 9 strong and striking out 11, that's pretty good for a guy that's 33, 34 years old, and he's not getting any younger. So another player that I think has been playing very well on his new team, Blake Snell, 1.86 ERA through his first 2 games pitching, 16 Ks in 9 2/3 innings. Now his WHIP is a 1.24, so not awesome, but not terrible. Pretty decent, pretty solid overall. But I'd have to say, in his last 2 starts, he has not really gone very far in the game, and he's not a pitcher. Very contrary to Lance Lynn, he's not a durable pitcher. He's not a guy that you're going to keep in for 7 or 8 or 9 innings. He's never really been like that in his career. I mean, he went 4 2/3 in his first start of the year against the Diamondbacks. He did have 8 Ks, and then in his second start against the Giants, he had 8 Ks again, but only went in 5 innings. So right there, that tells you something that, okay, even though he's not going to be in for long, he's going to put up really good numbers. He's going to put up really, really good numbers. He's going to be efficient, and he's probably a big reason why this Padres team their pitching has been so good. I mean, their team ERA is under 2 right now. So he's got a lot to do with that. Another guy who's back with the team that he was once with, but he was an off-season pickup still, Jake Arrieta. He's actually found, I think, a little bit of a second life in his career after struggling in Philadelphia. Now, last year, not a great year for him, 5.08 ERA. Now, this year, he's 2-0 through his first 2 games. He's got a 2.25 ERA, 12 innings, 9 strikeouts, a 1.42 WHIP, so he has been getting some guys on base a little bit here and there. His last start, he did walk 3 guys, but he's gone 6 strong in both outings against the Pirates. Gave up 6 hits in the first one, 7 hits in the second one, and he's had 5 strikeouts and 4 strikeouts respectively in those 2 starts. So he's off to a great start. And then the last guy that I want to mention, who's also been playing, I would say, pretty well, and I think that he's going to be another guy that they're going to really love in Minnesota, Alex Colomé. And I knew that he was going to be a great pickup. I knew that he was going to be a really good pickup, and I do wonder what the White Sox would have looked like if you had a guy like Colomé and Hendricks both on the same team, right? I mean, that would have been a really, really good rotation, a really good bullpen, to say the least. So, and Colomé, I have to give a lot of credit to him. I think that he's done a really nice job so far. He's got 2 saves early on in the year. Pretty solid for a guy that, again, this is early on in the year. He's only played in 3 games. Hasn't given up a run yet. He's in 4 innings. He's struck out 3, a .75 WHIP. So he's your short inning guy that comes in for just quick bursts and tries to get in and out of the innings, and he's doing just that. That's the important thing right there, is that he's doing just that. But getting into some guys that have been really struggling and that have not been playing well at all, first things first, we have to address Andrew Benintendi. I know that I was going to mention it before. I mean, he's off to a really bad start. And again, to the life of me, I don't know why they went after Benintendi. I really don't. I feel like he's just such an underperforming player, and I think that he is never going to live up to the hype. I just really don't. I mean, I just think that at this point in his career, he's 26. Maybe he finds some second life, 28, 29. But he's got a 200 average right now and 25 at-bats, a 459 OPS. So he's not been hitting well at all power-wise. Now, I will say, in each of his last 3 games, he's on a little hitting streak. He's had 1 hit in each of his last 3 games, but he went 1 for 5, 1 for 3, and 1 for 4. Now he has struck out 1 time against Cleveland on the 5th, 1 time against Cleveland on the 7th, and then against the White Sox on the 8th, he struck out twice. So, I mean, he's going up there and trying to just swing for the fences, I think, and it's just not working for him. So he's not been playing well at all. Then you also have to look at Jock Peterson, and I'm shocked by this. I don't know if Jock Peterson just he went too hard into spring training, and now it's just kind of starting to backfire for him, but he has not been playing well either. And I think that, this Cubs team, they might have been really, excited because of what he was doing in spring training. I know I would have been. I mean, he had 5 or 6 home runs,
He was batting above 500 at one point. I mean, he was absolutely crushing the ball. And then all of a sudden, he's completely forgotten how to hit. He has no idea how to hit anymore. He's got one home run, very contrary to what he had in spring training, especially in that short time frame. He's batting .095. He's not even above 100. He's got 3 RBIs in 21 at-bats. Not good numbers, right? I mean, not good numbers at all. And so hopefully he can turn things around, because I think the Cubs, they're looking for that big power bat out in the outfield. I think they were trying to replace a guy like Kyle Schwarber. Jock Peterson does fit the bill for the most part on that. An average fielder, a lot of power. I don't know. I have not been impressed with how he's been playing early on. Another guy that is actually second to last in qualified hitters in batting average this year, Elvis Andrus, another offseason pickup, went out in that trade, came over from the Rangers after the Athletics gave up Chris Davis. Andrus is batting .071. He's got an RBI. He's got a .212 OPS. Not hitting well. I think they got him very early on. They got him very late into his career. They should not have gone after him. I think that he is a waste of space, quite frankly, on the roster. I think that he's somebody that is well past his time, well past his prime, and I don't think there's any turning back for him. I really don't. So those are some guys that have been playing pretty poorly, I would say, early on in the season that were off-season pickups. But for the most part, most of the guys that were off-season pickups, they've actually been playing pretty well. So that is a very good sign for some teams. And again, guys like Michael A. Taylor playing this well for the Royals, that could be the difference between them being in maybe third place and maybe in second place, fighting for a wild card spot. I don't think people realize how important it is for some of these teams that have these offseason pickups playing this well, what it could do for them down the road later on in the season. It could really kind of swing them into one way or another in terms of either being a playoff team or being a wild card team or not. So having those guys play well, it's crucial. It really, really is. But, folks, that's going to close things out here for us in our second segment on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Now, coming up after the commercial, I'll discuss whether or not the Padres or the White Sox will be contenders this year with some of their star players battling injuries. It's been a lot of fun so far, but we got a lot more to go, so don't change that channel. We'll be right back here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be, visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Great to have you all here still with me today. Jack Ridenauer again. And in the previous segment, I got into discussing which players that were off-season adds over the last few months have been playing very well and also very poorly so far this year. I want to now get into discussing whether or not the White Sox and the Padres can still be contenders with some of their star players being injured, because both teams, quite frankly, I think could be World Series caliber teams. They've got great managing, they've got great players, they've got great pitching, very well balanced, very deep, and a lot of talent. And so I really don't see how, again, unless the injury bug bites them, which it has kind of early on. Now, I'm going to get into each team's injuries, and I'm going to go through one team at a time. I'll do the White Sox first. I'll say why they could be and why they could not be contenders this year with the injuries that they've had. So for the White Sox, obviously Eloy Jimenez being out 5 to 6 months with a pectoral injury. Tim Anderson on the 10-day injured list. Could be a nagging injury, though, throughout the season, with it being a hamstring injury. So getting into the case against the White Sox, well, here's kind of the issue, right? Yermin Mercedes has absolutely just blown up and has helped this team out tremendously. He leads the MLB in hitting above 500. He's batting .556 right now. He's actually, I believe, the first player ever through their first 8 Major League at-bats to have a hit in each of their first 8 Major League at-bats. So, again, a player that could be very special that nobody really realized. He's batting .556. The next highest batter is .258 with Luis Robert. Moncada's hitting sub-200. Abreu's batting .212. So they're not getting a whole lot of help outside of Mercedes. And that's the issue, is that they don't really have a whole lot of help. And with having Eloy Jimenez there, it's that extra cushioning, right? He could be the one hitting above 300 and giving them a little bit more of a boost, but he's not. He's injured. He's not playing. And the same thing kind of goes with their pitching. Their pitching has not really bailed them out much either. Lance Lynn's the only one that's really done anything on the mound. Giolito and Keuchel have both, they've got terrible ERAs, right? And so you've got a team that has a very good player injured. You've got another player that is banged up a little bit, and your pitching's not going well, and the only one that's really doing anything is a guy that nobody even knew about coming into the league or coming into the season much. Maybe there was some talk, circulating around the White Sox camp, but other than that, he was not necessarily a nationally known name before this season. So I could see that a lack of support happening for this White Sox team if players like Jimenez and players like Anderson are banged up this year. I could see their extra players, their personnel, their bench, their utility guys starting to struggle, right? And obviously Jose Abreu's not a utility guy, but with their other players and their other star-powered players not playing well right now, that does concern me. That does make me wonder, okay, is this team, without these certain players, are they still that team? Are they going to have that help to back up those players that are injured and that are not playing? Are they going to have those other guys like Jose Abreu and Yohan Moncada step up? I mean, Nick Madrigal's not hitting well either, right? Adam Eaton's not hitting well either. Yasmani Grandal's not hitting well. So the entire White Sox team is just not hitting well at all. Now, somehow, some way, they still find themselves in the top 10 in some major hitting categories, but I think that has a lot to do with how well Yermin Mercedes has been hitting. He's literally carrying the load for the entire White Sox. So the case against the White Sox, basically, I don't know if they're going to have the help that they need, right? I don't know if players don't step up the way they need to. I could see this team really struggling and actually not wind up making it to the World Series. Maybe still to the playoffs, but not to the World Series. I think that they need players that are supposed to be stepping up to step up, and they also need to have those guys come back, obviously, right? They need those players to come back from injury. So the case for the White Sox, though, it's interesting because they're still 4-4. They're right now in second place, and I think that although the Royals, I think, will give them some competition, the Tigers are going to fizzle out at some point. I just don't think that they've got the manpower, the firepower, the talent to take them through an entire 162-game season and be really, really good. The Indians are in a different kind of developing stage right now. I mean, they've started to kind of rebuild slowly but surely, and so I don't think that they're going to be any competition. So the White Sox and the Twins might give them this kind of back and forth. The White Sox are also still, again, like I mentioned, high up in some hitting categories. They're 7th in team home runs right now in the MLB, and they're 9th in team average in the MLB. So they're still hitting well, but that, again, speaks volume to how well Yermin Mercedes has been hitting. Now, if they've, and if guys like, and although other players have not stepped up, it's important, and it's very, very good that a player like Yermin Mercedes, who nobody expected to step up, is stepping up and kind of taking in that role, if you will, of, hey, if Jimenez is not here, I'm going to hit as well as he does, plus as well as Jose Abreu does. I mean, he's hitting, his combined average right now is probably, what Jose Abreu and Eloy Jimenez hit last year combined themselves. So Mercedes is doing some very special things. Now, is he going to keep up this style of play throughout the entire season? Probably not, right? Probably not. He's not going to have the entire season of batting .556 the entire way. That's just not, if he did, it would probably go down as the greatest baseball season a player ever had, by far. If you're batting that well, we talk about and glorify the idea of hitting above 400. If somebody went an entire season and played a legitimate, substantial amount of games, and they batted above 500, it would go down in history books. It would be incredible. But it is important that they've had a guy like Mercedes step up the way he's been able to step up. And the pitching has been really good from Lynn. But it hasn't been good outside of that, and so that does worry me. But again, the fact that Lynn has been able to anchor it, and I think that I could see this team getting bailed out by players and personnel that they might not have expected at the beginning of the year. And I think that's the beauty of this White Sox team, is that they've got players that people aren't expecting to do much, and they go out and they overperform, and as a result, it helps the team out, right? Lance Lynn is dominating the pitching on the mound for the White Sox. Keuchel and Giolito have not done anything, but having Lynn there to be that anchor, to be that force, it's only a matter of time until Keuchel and Giolito, I think, settle down and they can actually get back into their normal kind of rhythm, if you will. And I just think that they've had unlikely people step up. They've got a little bit more veteran leadership because, again, you also have to factor in Lance Lynn brings World Series caliber experience. Tony La Russa brings World Series caliber managing, and he's won World Series before with other teams. He's been there before. I mean, he's one of the greatest managers ever. He's one of the most winning managers ever. So I think that at the end of the day, having La Russa there, this is just kind of a tough time right now for them. They're kind of at a low point. I don't think it's going to be necessarily plaguing them throughout the entire season, but it is something to watch. How will they be able to come back from having Jimenez banged up till probably August and Anderson kind of in and out of the lineup? How is that going to affect them overall throughout the rest of the season? Are they going to have the players that need to start playing well play well? And I think, again, a lot of it's going to fall on Tony La Russa. If he can get guys to bond together and come together and figure it out, then, yeah, I think that it's going to be a pretty special season in Chicago. But if not, it might not be. It might be very disappointing. So, all in all, I think that they could still kind of be contenders, but not really. But now getting over to the Padres, they really only have Fernando Tatis that is out right now. But what is worrisome is that he could be out for the entire year. So although it's just one player, that player is very important, and he might not be coming back. Now, the case for the Padres, well, first things first, they don't have much competition to worry about. That is one thing that they can kind of check off on their list, is that 2 of the 5 teams in the division are below 500, and they'll most likely be a below 500 teams for the rest of the season. The Giants are just going to be average. They're going to be the epitome of average this year. They're not going to be anything special. I think that they'll be a sub, maybe right at 500 team, maybe a little over 500, but that will be about it. They're not going to be anything special outside of that. Not to mention, they also have great hitting across the board outside of Tatis. Eric Hosmer has been absolutely raking for the Padres. He's essentially the Yerman Mercedes for the Padres. And Cronenworth and Will Myers have both been hitting above 300. And Jurickson Profar has been batting 294. So they've got 4 other guys that have been hitting very well for this team. Not to mention, at one point of the season, early on, Eric Hosmer had over a 2 OPS, over a 2,000 OPS. Unheard of. Really unheard of. And they've got the second-best team ERA in the MLB. They've had a ton of help pitching-wise. I mean, Blake Snell's been phenomenal on the mound. I know Yu Darvish kind of got banged up in his first start and his first outing for the Padres. But the fact that they've got, again, this is the difference between the Padres and the White Sox. The Padres personnel and the Padres kind of other cast of characters, if you will, that they've got on their team are stepping up and playing really well, and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Will Myers is a great hitter. Same thing with Drake Cronenworth. Same thing with Eric Hosmer. They're all very good hitters. Jurickson Profar is a great hitter. He's a great fielder. And so having them doing what they're supposed to be doing, it's kind of leveling out having Tatis potentially out for the entire year. Whereas for the White Sox, with both Jimenez out and Anderson kind of in and out of the lineup, the other players, they have not really stepped up. They have not been performing the way that they should be. And so that is, I think, somewhat of the concern is that, okay, if we don't have those guys stepping up when they need to be, where else are we going to get the help from? Whereas the Padres, it seems like they've got help coming from any angle on their team. They're such a deep team. And so that is the one thing I think that the Padres can hold over the White Sox, is that the Padres are a deeper team than the White Sox. Now, the case against the Padres, I would say that, again, they're not necessarily one of the top-tier hitting teams like they usually should be, or that I think some people expect them to be. I don't think it's not anything to be worried about, but it is something to pay attention to, right? I mean, they're not in the top 10 in hitting and batting average right now, so that is something to pay attention to, but it's not detrimental, I don't think. The power numbers might dip a little bit, but again, they are getting hitting from so many different angles and from so many different players that it won't really matter, I don't think. I don't think it'll matter at all that, they're not in the top 10 in hitting, because they're going to have so much hitting from so many different players and from so many different personnel that it could really actually come out to being, helping them and beneficial for them that they are not in the top 10, but they've got all this extra help, and they might say, what does it matter? We've got one of the better records in baseball. That's what matters, not being a top 10 hitting team. And I think that their pitching is also keeping them at bay as well, as opposed to the White Sox, who have had some struggles with the pitching. Now, I just think that it's going to boil down to a depth thing, right? I think the Padres have so much more depth across the board. I'm going to have to say that the Padres are for sure more likely to be contenders, even with the injuries that they have right now on their team, because A, the injuries that they have are not as many as the White Sox, and B, they're a deeper team than the White Sox. They've got more personnel that are actually performing at a high level as opposed to the White Sox. Now, the only thing that I would give in favor of the White Sox is that they don't have anybody that's potentially out for the entire season. So that is a good thing, right? I think come playoff time, if you've got Eloy Jimenez back and he starts hitting well and he kind of, hits the ground running, if you will, and jumps right back into the season in the full swing of things, then I think you could have a different conversation and say, okay, this team might be playing much better. It will matter on whether or not those other players and the other personnel step up as well. That's going to be the other thing to pay attention to. All in all, though, I really could see the Padres still being that really good contending team because mainly, let's face it, they've got pitching depth, they've got hitting depth. I mean, they've got guys that they can throw around the field anywhere, and they've got guys that are going to perform, right? And not to mention, again, they have no competition. I think that the White Sox are going to have some competition from the Twins, and I quite frankly think they'll have some from the Royals as well. Especially if the White Sox keep playing like they are right now, I think that the Royals might push the White Sox a little bit for that second spot in the AL West, in the AL Central. And I just do worry that, they won't be able to put it all together. Now, the one thing I would also give to the White Sox over the Padres is they've got guys that are experienced. They've got guys that have won before, that have been there before, that have played in high-pressure games, that have won high-pressure games. Now, the Padres do have a guy like Blake Snell who's played in the World Series, but when you've got a manager like Tony La Russa who's been around the block a couple times, probably an understatement, but he's been there, he's done that, he's been around the game for quite some time, dating back to the 70s, I think that it's going to be something that might work out for them. And again, I don't know if that it's this year for them. I think the Padres have a better chance overall, barring any injuries from either team, to go to the World Series than the White Sox, just because I think that the White Sox might need a year to kind of get themselves all situated and having to deal with, again, a new manager and adjusting to that. Now, at the same time, they might not have any time to need to adjust to having Tony La Russa around, because although a lot of people felt that coming into the season, him having kind of an older baseball mind, it might affect the newer style of baseball, but that's not the case. I think Tony La Russa's adapted pretty well, and I think that it's just unfortunate that they've gotten hit with a couple injuries, which, again, I think that they can work themselves out of eventually. But we'll have to see what happens with these two teams to pay attention to, and especially two teams to monitor their injury situation. But most importantly, I think the Padres are going to be just fine with or without Tatis. The White Sox, though, they're going to need some extra help from people. I think they could be fine, but they're going to have to hope and pray that guys start playing a little bit better and start getting out of this rut that they're in. So that'll do it for this segment, folks. Once again, thanks for sticking around. But stay right there, because we'll be right back after this commercial break for the final segment today, where I'll share which teams I could see potentially challenging the Dodgers for the World Series and prevent them from making it back to the World Series this year, but also preventing them from winning it as well. Don't go anywhere, everyone, because we've got one last segment here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup final.
Listen now.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the final segment here on the GSMC Baseball Podcast. Jack Ridenauer still with you. And in the previous segment, I got into whether or not the White Sox and the Padres can still be contenders with some of their star players injured. But I want to now get into which teams that can significantly challenge the Dodgers this year for the World Series in both the NL and the AL, and could even beat them in order to get to the World Series, or maybe prevent them from repeating as World Series champions. So the first team I want to discuss is the Philadelphia Phillies. They're right now 5-1, off to a really, really strong start. I personally could see them contending with the Dodgers, and here's why. I think that they secretly have a very talented team that I don't think people have really caught on to quite yet, because I think we might get very comfortable with, well, Bryce Harper is there, but he doesn't really do what he used to do. He's still a formidable hitter. He's somebody that could still go off for 30-plus home runs. And yeah, he might bat 250 or 265, but if you've got 30 home runs and you've got 90-plus RBIs, I would take that and a 250 average over a guy that's got 5 or 6 home runs and he's got a 295 average and maybe a handful of RBIs, right? Not to mention, they've got a really good, solid, young core group of players. Rhys Hoskins, I think, is going to be a very good player. I mean, he's averaging a .417 batting average right now. He actually leads the Phillies in batting average. He's got a home run and 4 RBIs this year with over a 1,200 OPS. JT Realmuto, I mean, hey, how much more important can you be to a team when you've got a guy that can not only be a formidable hitter and somebody that is feared from the plate, but also a great catcher, one of the best, if not the best catchers, backstop-wise, in the MLB. 333 average right now, 963 OPS. Didi Gregorius is also playing well, 304. And Bryce Harper, of course, batting 263. But still, I mean, 2 RBIs, a 777 OPS. Last year, he had a really strong start to the season, wound up batting at 268. He had 13 homers and 33 RBIs, but he had a 962 OPS. So this is a team that I think could definitely hang with the Dodgers. I'm not saying that they will beat the Dodgers, but I could see the Phillies giving the Dodgers a run for their money. I could see them preventing the Dodgers from repeating as potential World Series champions. Not to mention, I mean, let's face it, if one of these teams, gets, again, hit with the injury bug at any certain point, things are up for grabs. It's a totally different ballgame at that point. The Phillies are 6th right now, or tied for 6th in the MLB, and team average at a 262 clip. So they've got a really solid batting average right now, and a very strong start to the season. I know the Dodgers are sitting at 2nd place in that category, but then home run-wise, I mean, again, this is a team that I think could definitely hang right there with the Dodgers, because if Rhys Hoskins gets going, if Alec Baum gets going, if JT Realmuto, Bryce Harper, they've got guys that can hit the ball and that can hit for a high percentage, and also just a lot of production. I could totally see that happening. I think the one thing that the Phillies might not meet to the Dodgers standards is the pitching. The Dodgers pitching is so good, right? I mean, it is so good. But I think at the end of the day, the Phillies could definitely be a team that they can potentially challenge the Dodgers for being the World Series champions. And then the Mets, obviously, I think the Mets did exactly what the Padres did. I think they bolster their lineup enough so that they can compete with teams like the Dodgers. I mean, now they're legitimately, I think, a very, very, very strong team. Very strong team. A very deep team, too. I think it's a team that also had a lot of already good players coming into this season on their team, right? I mean, you've got guys like Dominic Smith, who quite frankly can play anywhere. You've got guys like Jeff McNeil. You've got guys like Will Conforto, Brandon Nimmo. I mean, they've got a lot of guys that can hit the ball, and then you add Francisco Lindor to the mix, and then you also have the great pitching in Jacob deGrom, who, quite frankly, I mean, he's continuing to look like the best pitcher in baseball. You've got Carlos Carrasco. You've got guys like Marcus Stroman. You've got a lot of different weapons that you can throw at a team like the Dodgers, and so I think that the Dodgers might come into this year with this thinking of, okay, we have the best, most well-rounded, deepest team in baseball, and that might be true in some cases. But the Mets have now rivaled that, I think. Same thing with the Padres, and I'll get into the Padres in a minute. But I know that the Mets, their team batting average is not great, batting .246 right now. They've had some issues with COVID, or at least teams that they were going to play have had issues with COVID. So that has kind of set them back just a little bit. But again, it's early on in the year, and I could see the Mets at some point or another really picking up steam. I mean, they're 2-2 right now, sitting in 2nd place in the NL East, right behind none other than the Philadelphia Phillies. And again, we've seen how teams have started off incredibly strong the first 3 weeks of the season, and then they wind up having a losing record and not even coming close to the playoffs come September. It's a long season. We've got a lot of months ahead of us. I mean, this season just literally started. It literally just started. So a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can get shaken up here, and we could really see, potentially some teams rising up and challenging the Dodgers at some point or another, and I think the Mets can be just that. Now, another team that I could maybe see challenging the Dodgers, and call me crazy, but I could see the Astros doing it. The Astros are actually, they're impressing me, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I'm not an Astros fan. 6-1 right now, off to a great start during the year, and I think that they have a lot of motivation. I know the Dodgers have a lot of motivation to repeat, But I think the Dodgers, they were just trying to get over that hump. They had been to the World Series 3 of the last 4 years. They had continuously gone to the NLCS. They had continuously been in the playoffs. And they were just trying to get to that World Series championship. I wonder if satisfaction and complacency will set in now with the Dodgers. And if that's the case, well, that's going to be an issue if they run into a team like the Astros, who, quite frankly, I think they have more to prove to people than the Dodgers do, because, again, their World Series championship has been marred by cheating scandal. And so now if they can get back to that same point and that same exact situation in the season where they're in the World Series, they're going to come out with a lot more fire. They're going to come out with a lot more intensity and a lot bigger and a bigger desire to win, because they know they have something to prove. They know they have to silence the haters and let people know, hey, we can compete with these teams, whether we're cheating or not. It doesn't matter, because we're that good. And Houston, it's good that they were able to re-sign some guys, bring some guys back this year. I know that losing George Springer is going to be a really, really big hit for them. But guys like Alex Bregman, he's been off to a great start, much better than he was last year, batting .360. Yuri Gurriel is batting .346. Yordan Alvarez batting .333. Carlos Correa is batting .321. Jose Altuve is batting .310. Those 5 guys are each batting .300 and higher. That's a problem for other teams. Now, it dips down after that to .217. Kyle Tucker's batting .200. So it does significantly drop off, but it takes 5 guys for it to eventually drop off. You've got guys that are also hitting the ball pretty well, the long ball, that is. Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, and Yordan Alvarez each have 2 home runs. Kyle Tucker's got 3. So they, I think, can go toe-to-toe with the Dodgers. I really do think that, especially if they keep playing the way that they've been playing this year. I could see that happening. It's just a matter of them keeping up with this pace. And they're both actually sitting 2 and 3, respectively, in the MLB in team batting average. The Dodgers are second. The Astros are third. It's a big difference from where the Astros were last year. And I think that they are aware of that. And again, they have this last hurrah mentality where it's, hey, it's all or nothing now, because this might not be the same team we have next year. And so they might want to come and finish out with a bang. And if they do go to the World Series and win it, I could see some of these guys re-signing and sticking around. And it could, again, maybe solidify the Astros' legacy and keep this momentum building up that they've got going on right now. But I definitely could see the Astros pulling it off against the Dodgers and really challenging them for that. And then the Padres, obviously, I think that the Padres are going to really give them a run for their money. They have easily matched what the Dodgers have in terms of talent and rotation and depth. Easily, no question. When you go out and you get Yu Darvish and then you get Blake Snell, 2 players that within the last 3 years have been in the running for the Cy Young Award, one of them winning it, and then you've already got a guy like Dinelson Lamet, who's going to be, I think, a very good pitcher. You've got a guy like Joe Musgrove, who is a sneaky, really good 4th starter, if you will. And then you're just kind of waiting for when Mike Clevenger gets back from being injured. I mean, that's a really serious pitching rotation. Very serious. And then now you've also got other guys that have been stepping up for the Padres. Eric Hosmer, Jake Cronenworth. You've got guys like Will Myers. Manny Machado hasn't been off to the greatest start in his career, but he's still hitting pretty solid. I mean, he's off to a better start than he was a year ago, right? I mean, when he first started playing last year, and when the season first started, Manny Machado was not good. He was not playing well at all. He was playing very poorly. And I definitely could see, him turning things around a little bit. And he's clearly done that. I mean, he's batting .240 right now, so not great. But in comparison to where he started last year in the season, it's a big difference. It's a big jump nonetheless. And so I think that they've got the potential, they've got the star power to hang with the Dodgers. Again, the Dodgers they've got so much talent, and the talent that they have is so strong. But other teams, I think, they have started to match that in this offseason. They went out and they made the proper, pickups, the proper moves, the proper acquisitions that they needed to in order to keep up with the Dodgers. Because if they weren't going to do that, it would have been all she wrote, right? I mean, it would have been an easy runaway again with the NL West this year and the Dodgers being in it. The Padres needed to do something, and I give a lot of credit to their management and their front office for saying, hey, listen, we're going to go all in. We've got over $600 million tied up between 2 players for at least the next 10 years. We might as well try and go all in, right? We might as well try and build a dynasty or some huge power team and see what we can do. So I could see the Padres definitely going toe-to-toe with the Dodgers. And then the Braves, although the Braves are off to a pretty sluggish start, I will have to say they're not off to a great start at all. They're right now sitting at 2 and 4. I think that they can figure some things out. I think that they've got some guys not playing great right now, guys like, Ronald Acuna Jr. isn't playing as well as I think people would like him to. I know the pitching has been kind of iffy, kind of up and down here and there. All in all, though, I could see the Braves really challenging them. They were 1 win away from going to the World Series. I mean, let's remember that. They were 1 win away against the Dodgers from going to the World Series. So I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility. Now, I will have to probably detract what I just said about Ronald Acuna. He's batting .304 right now. He's leading the team in hitting. And quite frankly, he's leading the team in hitting by 1.5 miles and some. The next highest average is a .211 average. That's terrible, coming from Austin Riley. That is horrendous. So the Braves need to pick it up, though. They need to pick it up. I think that they've got the personnel. They've got the firepower. Freddie Freeman needs to get going here. Travis Darnell needs to get going here. They've got guys that can hang with the Dodgers, and I'm glad that they went out and got a guy like Charlie Morton who can at least hang with teams like the Dodgers in certain situations. But all in all, they need to pick it up. I could definitely see them challenging the Dodgers, but they're going to have to start playing a little bit better. Same thing with this next team, the White Sox. The White Sox are not in a great spot right now. They are not off to a great start, and it's clearly starting to show, right? I mean, this team really, really, really needs to find their groove sooner rather than later because time's ticking. And I know the season's early, but you already know, and you're kind of at a deficit when you know one of your top players in Eloy Jimenez is out for the next 5 months. So now you're kind of starting a step behind everybody. So you have to overcompensate in some situations. Some guys are going to have to step up. And it's been great that Yermin Mercedes can do that, and I think that's what's the beauty about the White Sox is that they've got the personnel that can step up when they need to, but the star power that they have is not performing well right now. And I think that the White Sox, if they do want to find themselves competing with the Dodgers in a World Series situation, they're going to have to flip the switch at some point. And it is early on, but I could see the White Sox challenging them because, again, it's another team that's got really good pitching that's balanced, and they've got a lot of hitting depth, and they've got a lot of guys that can put the ball in play. And if you've got all of those intangibles, that's exactly what the Dodgers are, right? They've got a ton of firepower. They've got a ton of guys that can hit all throughout the lineup. But it's the same thing with the White Sox. They've got guys that can hit through the 1 through 7 spot, legitimately, in my opinion. I really do believe that. Same thing with the Dodgers. Same thing with the Padres. A lot of these teams have the same kind of makeup to them. It's just a matter of can guys stay healthy and can players perform when they need to perform. The last team that I think could challenge the Dodgers potentially and prevent them from repeating as champions, and this is a little bit of a stretch, I know, but I could see the Twins doing it. And I can't believe I'm saying that. I really can't. And the reason why I say that is because this Twins team, again, very typical. They start off really, really strong. They have a great, great start. Come All-Star break, maybe somebody gets injured or something kind of just starts fizzling out for them. And then all of a sudden they start kind of plateauing, and they kind of just flatten out. They don't really do anything for the rest of the year. Maybe a couple little upticks here, maybe a couple downticks here. They come into the playoffs, and they're flat. They're just really flat, and they don't hit well. They don't play well, and that's where their season usually runs into a screeching halt. And I think this year it could be different because I think they've made good moves. Andrelton Simmons is starting to pay off more than I think people thought. It's great to have Jose Barrios pitching the way that he's pitching. You need to hope that Kenta Maeda can continue to put up the numbers he put up similar to last year. You have to hope that Nelson Cruz can put it all together and still stay healthy even into his older age that he's getting into. You know, same thing with Miguel Sano, need to get him going. Mitch Garver, need to get him going. Max Kepler, need to get him going. Need to get some guys going that should be hitting well and playing at a high level, right? Jorge Polanco, he's another guy that I think could be a big X factor for them that a couple of years ago he was an all-star. I mean, I remember when I was playing Beat the Streak, I would usually side with Jorge Polanco, and 8 times out of 10 I was right. You know, I was right with who I was picking. It was Jorge Polanco. So I think that they could definitely hang with the Dodgers if, again, they play their cards right. The reason why I think they can do that is because they've got a great bullpen. I think teams that have great bullpens are how you're going to beat the Dodgers, because I think what the Dodgers are really good at is they're good at wearing down their opponents. They got guys that can hit 1 through 9, 1 through 8, whatever, and although a starter might rough them up a little bit, he's going to have to come out of the game eventually, right? And then if they go to the bullpen, I think that's where the Dodgers start licking their chops a little bit and saying, hey, we've got them on their heels now. They're going to their bullpen. Let's take advantage of that. And that's where they win ball games. They win ball games at a lot of times in a lot of situations later into the game. Their 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th inning hitting is sensational. And that's how they win games. It's because they're so much more durable because, again, they're a deeper team. They can withstand an entirety of a game, of a pitcher pitching a scoreless game, a complete game, a really strong outing, they can withstand that because they know that, hey, we've got such a deep team that it's bound for somebody to at least get on base. And once we can just get that one guy on base or get that one hit, it just doesn't stop there. It just opens the floodgates and it continues to roll through. So those are some teams that I could definitely see competing with the Dodgers and really giving them a run for their money and trying to prevent them from being World Series champions again, even getting the World Series, whatever it might be. The Phillies, Mets, maybe the Astros and the Twins, definitely the Padres. And if the Braves and the White Sox pick it up, I could definitely see them too. But it's just going to come down to teams that have great bullpens, that are just as deep, maybe not as deep as the Dodgers, but just as deep. And they also have strong pitching rotations that go further than two guys. You need to have a rotation that can go 3 deep or 4 deep, because if you do, that's where the Dodgers have to really be on their A game further and further into a series. Whereas if you have just 2 really good pitchers, they can kind of, get through those first 2 games, and then once they get into the middle and the end of the rotation, that's where they take advantage of it. So we'll have to see how the rest of the season goes. It's going to be interesting, and I'm really excited to see where teams finish, but also if anybody can stop the Dodgers. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for us here today. As always, thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review that really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, we'd also really appreciate that. And until next time, everyone, thanks so much for joining me, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.